Hello, my name is Tony. British gangster movies of the 70s. Get Carter goes without saying. Definitely the very best example of the genre and in the run-in for greatest British film ever made. Yes, it is, okay? Then there's Dick Burton as the Cray twins stitched into one venomous body in Villain. Ollie Reed kicking ass in the gorgeously brutal Sit-In Target. Stacey Keach and Freddie Starr on joyously sleazy form in The Squeeze. The two Sweeney TV to big screen transfers with Thor and Waterman reprising their small screen roles and ramping up the violence. Then as the decade closed out, made in 79 but released in 1980, came The Long Good Friday, which made a movie star out of Bob Hoskins and boosted the career of Helen Mirren, as well as giving Pierce Brosnan his first significant screen role. But let's not hold that against it, for goodness sake. And why not? Well, it's because it was a cracking little slab of Gangland Brit Noir, and no mistake. Director John Mackenzie had no track record with this genre, and playwright Barry Keefe, who wrote the script, traditionally penned stage, TV and radio plays. However, you wouldn't know it from watching The Long Good Friday. It has a sure-footed and confident cinematic look and feel of something produced by masters in the field of dark, slick crime fiction movies. What helps immensely is the jazzy, hook-propelled score by renowned session musician Francis Monkman, and cinematography by Phil Mayhew, which manages to pull off the feat of integrating visual grittiness with a glamorous sheen in a dynamic and compatible way. The storyline is a straightforward setup wrapped around the mystery of who is doing what and why. Allow me to explain. The preamble opens in Belfast, where we see person A delivering a shitload of cash to person B, skimming some for himself. We see person B and his colleagues counting the cash in a country farmhouse. They are attacked by uniformed gunmen. Meet Harold Shand. Harold, played by Bob Hoskins, is a premier London gang boss in the process of brokering a partnership and power-sharing deal with Charlie, Eddie Constantine, a delegate from the US Mafia. Shand has big dreams of business expansion and semi-legitimate status, empire building by redeveloping decrepit London docklands, aided and abetted by corrupt construction boss and politician Councillor Harris, Brian Marshall. Shit soon goes horribly wrong. Harold's Rolls-Royce and properties are suddenly subject to bomb attacks, exploding spectacularly, and his associates start getting murdered, including his lifelong friend and fellow criminal compadre Colin. Hence the question, who is doing this and why? Realizing the Americans will bail if the situation isn't quickly resolved, Harold and his crew set about their investigation, which includes threats, pressuring corrupt cops, violence, intimidation, and torture of informers and other mobsters, who are the usual suspects and standard sources of information. Running into a brick wall, pressure mounts, and Harold's frustrations escalate. His mistress, high-class totty Victoria Helen Mirren, is somewhat uptown in the intelligence stakes. She gives Harold an inkling about his trusted lieutenant Jeff, Derek Thompson. Eventually, Shand confronts Jeff, who spills the beans. Seems he was coerced by Councillor Harris to send Colin to Ireland to deliver money to the IRA on Harris's behalf, in order to keep his Irish construction workers happy. The night of the delivery, 3 top IRA operatives were killed, and the money went missing. The IRA think Harold sold them out to the security services and trousered the cash in a double cross. It is a terrorist revenge campaign that he is now the brunt of. Harold flies into a rage and stabs Jeff repeatedly in the throat with a broken bottle until he dies. Jeff goes on to play charge nurse Charlie Fairhead in TV medical soap Casualty for 40-odd years, proving there is an afterlife of sorts. Shand arranges via Harris to pay the terrorists off with 60,000 quid's worth of compensation. A drop at a stock car racetrack is arranged with Harris and the London leadership of the IRA. Whilst they're counting the money, on Harold's orders, gunmen burst in and slaughter both Harris and the two provosts in a hail of shotgun lead. Thinking he's won, Shand goes to the Savoy to meet with Charlie and his lawyer and give him the good news that the problem has been solved. He finds them ready and to leave. The deal is off. On departing the Savoy and climbing into his ride, Harold finds his limo has been commandeered by IRA killers, one of whom is Pierce Brosnan. Brosnan doesn't speak. Let us be grateful for that small mercy. Shand sees Victoria being kidnapped in another car. He can only sit, seethe, and contemplate impotently as he is driven away at gunpoint to meet his fate. That's the meat and potatoes of it, synopsis-wise. But there's more to know and understand in order to grasp just why this film is so great, why the British Film Institute thought enough of it to vote it number 21 of their top 100 best British films ever. Get Carter came in at 16, so they got that one wrong, and to be honest, A Long Good Friday deserves to be in at least the top 10. But no matter, let's dispense with such frivolities. Bob Hoskins is an absolute revelation as Harold Shand, a pugnacious, ferocious ball of self-contained energy and explosive violence. A pit bull in human form. It's his film all the way, and he carries it with furious panache, snarling and spitting out some hard-bitten and sometimes very funny lines of dialogue as he visits his wrath and frustrations upon friend and foe alike. His astonishment and exasperation as events he can't understand or control play out around him are pure dramatic gold, and Hoskins immerses himself in the character so fully he makes everything frighteningly believable. The supporting cast, headed by a delicious Helen Mirren, are right on target also. No one puts a foot wrong. Special mention to Derek Thompson as Jeff, a role far removed from that in the medical soap opera Casualty he ended up consigned to for the rest of his working life. It strongly hints at a versatility and potential the public never got to see. Pity, but not for him. He's the highest paid soap star in Britain. As previously mentioned, the film benefits from killer music and cinematography. When you add to this Mackenzie's classy and tight direction and Barry Keefe's razor-sharp scripting, you've got a recipe for success, and that's what The Long Good Friday achieved, both creatively and financially. An instant classic, propelled to cult status when the home video release saw it become one of the most repeat-rented British films ever. It has set-piece moments that became immediate talking points. Colin stabbing at the swimming baths, Shand's pub exploding just as he pulls up outside with the Americans in tow, the row of kidnapped gangsters hanging by their feet in an abattoir as Harold demands to know what they know, the torture of an informer with a machete, Jeff's bloody demise, Harold's parting speech to the Americans, the shock murder of the IRA men at the stock car race, and of course the fabulously dark and fatalistic ending. Keefe scripts events with a keen eye and ear for gallows humour, and the dialogue crackles mischievously. Yes, there are some politically incorrect elements that will doubtlessly offend the delicate sensibilities and palpitate the anal nerves of some of today's mentally fragile little darlings, but it wasn't made for them, so they can fuck right off. Sociologically and politically, it taps into the cultural landscape of the time, drawing on fears of homegrown terrorism as the IRA were very much active, police and governmental corruption, and the creeping legitimization of criminal activity. Gangsters like Shand representing themselves as businessmen in a new Wild West, blurring the lines between organised urban crime and the corporate sector. Criminal or businessman? What's the difference? Well, Shand is likely more honest about it. The Long Good Friday is great fun, a great British film, a great British gangster film. It playfully challenges Scorsese and Coppola's domination of the genre from across the pond. As Shand says,
"Look at you. The mafia. I've shit 'em."
Something I was previously unaware of until I started writing the chaotic narration for this video and stumbled across it, is that Barry Keefe wrote the screenplay for a sequel titled Black Easter Monday. It's set 20 years after the events of the Long Good Friday. In it, the limo in which Shand is kidnapped is pulled over by the police and Harold escapes from the IRA. He exiles himself to Jamaica, returning to London 20 years later to prevent the East End being taken over by Yardies. For whatever reason, the film never got made, and I'm split between wishing it had on the one hand and being glad it wasn't on the other. I'm conflicted like that. Sequels are like remakes, they're mostly shit. Movie studios love them because there's an oven-ready audience or fan base wanting more. Usually they get given less. But what the studios aspire to is the holy grail of a franchise like Bond or Star Wars or Mission Impossible. And a sequel is the first step in that direction, but good ones are rare. Frankenheimer's The French Connection 2, Cameron's Aliens, exceptions to the rule of ever-decreasing creative and financial returns. For every one of those, there's at least 10 to 20 Exorcist 2 The Heretics stinking up the screen. In the case of The Long Good Friday though, the way it ended was fine and dandy, so maybe it's just as well it was left at that. I must thank you for taking the time to view, I appreciate it. Hit like or didn't like, leave in a comment along with your PIN number and card details, or subscribe to the channel. You can even suggest items for future review content, which I'll mostly ignore or brush off with a platitude or two, or maybe I'll address at some point. You won't know until it happens, so don't be put off. Oh, you are. Some people. No resilience. Meanwhile, yeah, you thought I'd stop doing this, right? Here's a song called Dead Pigs. Ooh, sweet! I spent the evening with you, watching shooting stars. All the time distracted, thinking girls and cars. And when the time seemed right for me to tip my hat, you left me hanging in your dust and turned down flat. What the hell if there's no point whatever life communicates about as much fucking use of dead pigs on roller skates. About as much fucking use of dead pigs on roller skates. I needed something to do, smoking in the dark. Hounds of love were rabid, biting worse than bark. And in the midnight hour you dealt the fatal blow. Navigation shot to shit with nowhere left to go. What the hell if there's no point whatever life communicates about as much fucking use of dead pigs on roller skates. About as much fucking use of dead pigs on roller skates. Ah, good grief, you little thief, you stole my life away. Skin of my teeth, beyond belief, everything you do and say. What the hell if there's no point whatever life communicates about as much fucking use of dead pigs on roller skates. About as much fucking use of dead pigs on roller skates.